This is a story of a boy in a city where crazy is the new normal, where monsters roam the streets, gun battles happen daily, and everyone, even their grandmas, have some kind of special ability they are able to use. This city is New York. From this boy's perspective, the city sucks as you get pickpocketed anytime you go outside, crazy people pick fights with you, and the wages barely cover rent. Yep, sounds about right for New York. One night 3 years ago, a gate opened in the city and another world began to merge with this one, leaving the landscape and social norms completely rearranged and having humans and other worlders live in peace together. Or at least as peaceful as it can get when missiles are casually being launched across the street. Leonardo gets knocked forward by the blast and wakes up to find a boot in his face belonging to this man, Zap Renfro. He calls him a newbie and pathetic for having to get his ass saved like this. So maybe he isn't cut out to be a part of Libra. However, Leonard has never met this guy in his life. But to understand how we got here, we must first go back to some hours earlier in the day, where Leonardo was sitting at a stool in a diner, while the waitress tells him off for never writing letters to his sister. She asks why he even came to a city like this alone in the first place, but he doesn't really have a clear answer. He says he is a reporter in training, but his salary is also in training, so he is absolutely starving and is only sustaining himself off the free coffee refills he gets here. The waitress offers him some food, but he's going to have to wash some dishes later to make up for it. He thanks her for the food, but before he can finally eat, his camera gets stolen by a sonic speed monkey, forcing him to run after it. The waitress has no idea what just happened, so another patron explains that a monkey just stole Leonardo's camera, but she didn't see it happen because they moved too fast for the human eye to keep track of. But that begs the question, how did Leonard see it happen? Those series of events bring us to where we are now with the boot in his face, but this is exactly what he has been waiting for, because it is his chance to meet the people from Libra. Leonard pretends to be the guy that Zap is looking for, Johnny Landis, and gets taken to the library headquarters, where the team leader introduces himself as Klaus von Reinhers and the girl next to him as Chain Sumeragi. He welcomes Leo believing that he is Johnny Landis, but Chain says that can't be possible because Johnny just died a while ago. The jig is up and Leo can do nothing but apologize for lying to them, but there is something that he must find answers to, and he had thought they would be able to help him find those answers. Before they can decide what to do from here, the news comes on and they see a report that a robber that was shooting missiles in the street has been apprehended by the police, but as they are about to transport him to prison, a stand pops out from his back and gets a kill streak. Just then, the broadcast is interrupted by the city's very own psychotic Riddler, Fempt, otherwise known as the King of Depravity. He says he has placed 2 demons in the city which will attack every few minutes, and as luck would have it, the second one was inside the monkey that stole Leo's camera. The building they are in gets destroyed and Zap thinks Leo did this on purpose because he is working for Fempt, but Klaus gets him to calm down and talks to Leo. He had noticed that Leo was able to follow the attack as it happened and asked how he was able to see it, so Leo explains. His parents had brought him and his sister Michelle to the city because they had heard that miracles beyond human understanding happen here, so they had hoped Michelle's legs would be healed since she can't walk. Something supernatural indeed happens, but the creature that appears tells one of them to receive the eyes of God, but at the cost of the other person. Leo was frozen stiff and couldn't say a thing, but Michelle spoke up saying the being should give Leo the eyes, and let's just say you can add seeing to the list of things she can't do now. Klaus understands Leo's situation and asks him to help save the world from Fempt's plot with his eyes. Leo and Zap head off to find the monkey before the stands can combine and reach full power, and Zap suggests that they just kill the monkey to get it over with, but Leo is not fond of that idea. The demon attacks again and the surrounding area is destroyed, including that diner that Leo was at before. Leo promises to save the waitress. However, the monster appears behind him and nearly wraps the show up early. But before that can happen, Zap shows up in time to save him and activates his powers to keep the monster busy while Leo takes care of the monkey. Leo points the gun at the monkey and is about to shoot it, but with his eyes of God, he is able to see a tick on the monkey's head that is acting as a gateway for the monster, so he removes the tick, averting the disaster much to the dismay of Fempt, who had set it up so that the monster would only reach full power after the monkey was killed. Leo is now a part of Libra and receives a warm welcome from everyone there, all except Zap, who follows him around and keeps stealing all his pizzas after he got a delivery job. Later, while Zap is once again following him around, Leo notices a dry cleaner's van that isn't what it seems to be. With his eyes, he can see that it is actually a monster truck, but Zap doesn't see what the big deal is. As the monster notices that Leo can see it, Leo drives off and is freaking out because he doesn't want a part of it. Zap sees how freaked out Leo is, and while he isn't really convinced of the threat, he calls Chain in to track the van just in case. However, soon after, the threat makes itself very apparent as the monster wounds Zap and kidnaps Leo to run experiments on him because of his eyes. But before they could take him, Zap managed to wipe some of his blood on the monster to keep track of them. Once they take Leo, he finds out that they've been kidnapping humans to sell as food in the other world, which was made illegal after the humans and monsters signed a peace treaty. However, the monsters are confident that they won't be getting caught and he will not be getting any help because of their camouflage. Back with the members of Libra, the others go to see Zap, who is currently in critical condition. But though he is unconscious, they realize that he is using his blood to track down Leo. It takes a lot of focus to keep track of a moving car, so he can't do anything else until the car stops. Meanwhile, Leo tries to escape the human smugglers by using his eyes of God to interfere with their vision and cause them to see what a drunk driver sees after a few too many drinks. The car crashes, and now that it has finally stopped, Zap is able to do something other than track and ignites the blood trail to lead the others to Leo. Once they find him, Klaus makes sure the smugglers are not going to be alive to regret what they have done. However, he went a little overkill considering Leo was still in the car. Leo was badly injured and ended up in the hospital, and after he had finally mostly recovered, he wanders around the hospital grounds, finding a cemetery hidden away. There he meets White, a girl who claims to be a ghost, but Leo takes a picture of her, proving she is in fact still alive. But that aside, he has other problems to deal with, like an elder god appearing outside his apartment and getting evicted because of it. Due to this, he now has to sleep at the office, but even here, he can't get any rest because Zap immediately sits on his face. He has some blood on his face thanks to some crackhead attacking him outside, but even after slicing the guy's throat, the dude didn't die. This was likely due to the effect of a drug that alters human physiology, so the team's new objective is to find the source of the illegal drug, Angel Scale, and to do that, they all have to go out and search for clues. But first, they have to make sure that Leo is still alive after he went unconscious from Zap sitting on him. They search all around the city, but they can't find a single clue as to where the drug is being produced, so Klaus has to take matters into his own hands and goes to meet Arlel, a very influential person in the other world, for answers. But he is not the only one here for a favor, as this guy, Olchenko, saunters up here thinking he is not a side character. Arlel's conditions involve playing a game of Profair, which is basically chess, but with DLC. Klaus tries to warn Olchenko that Arlel is not to be messed with, but he doesn't listen to and accepts a challenge to play for 10 hours straight in exchange for some nuclear weapons and killing Klaus. Why does he want to kill Klaus, you ask? I couldn't tell you, but he makes up some excuse about not wanting him to talk about what happened here, but he's probably trying to make his way into the main cast by getting rid of him. Long story short, Olchenko gets his ass handed to him and now is going to die, but Klaus steps in to save him. As part of the conditions for saving Olchenko and getting info on Angel Scale, he's going to have to play for 99 hours straight. He takes the challenge and begins playing the game, but with all that DLC, I don't really understand what is happening here. So we'll fast forward a little to where Klaus has just barely managed to last the 99 hours and gets the information needed to find Angel Scale's supplier and catch them. After that is all said and done, Leo spends some time with White in her hospital room, showing her some of the pictures he has taken of the city, which excites her because she hasn't gotten to go out in over 3 years. Later, Leo is seen boarding a train when he looks out the window and sees someone with bright red lights shining around them. However, he doesn't think much of it since it could likely be chalked up to your everyday craziness over here. But on the contrary, later at a Libra party, when he relays that random encounter to everyone, the mood suddenly shifts and they start interrogating him on what exactly he saw. They realize that the description he gave matches that of a vampire, and if a vampire was spotted in the city, then they are going to need to call in a specialist on them. Everyone dreads the thought of having to call him in, and that is for one reason. The dude, Lucky Abrams, causes misfortune wherever he goes. Once he spots Zap on the street with Leo, he calls out to him. But a truck then crashes in front of him and a shard of glass is launched into Zap's head. They head back to the office where everyone was already waiting for Abrams because they saw the news of his plane crashing and knew it had to be him. Abrams was cursed by the vampires, but thanks to his natural good luck, he is never injured by any of the occurrences that happened due to the curse, but the people around him not so much. Once he has settled in, he asks Leo to take a look at something for him since he possesses the eyes of God. It is a vampire hand that is gripping onto a piece of paper, and Abrams believes that the paper has the name of the Elder 13 vampire written on it. However, when Leo takes a look at it, something goes wrong and he sees a blinding flash of light. They want to go investigate further, so they take him to a chasm which no one has ever been able to search, but they believe Elder 13 may be hiding in there. However, once Leo takes a look inside, he discovers that it's not just one vampire down there, it's thousands of them. While they were doing their investigation, 2 vampires suddenly attack the city, and they are far too powerful for the normal police, so Steven and KK have to handle it until Klaus can make it back to the city. They are definitely skilled, but not cut out for this fight and get defeated easily. Their interference did, however, manage to keep them here long enough for Klaus to return and seal the vampires. Later on, when Leo goes to visit White, she is angry at him for some reason, but he can't figure out why. Zap sees him looking all puzzled and asks what's wrong, but he's the last person Leo would want to ask for advice. They get on the scooter and are arguing about whether to get to a meeting or to get some food, but then a giant car monster attacks and now they are just trying to get out alive. Klaus and Abrams get word of this and realize that this is Aliyura's doing, so they go to retrieve the person she is after, Doc Hummer. He has living blood in his veins called Deldro Brody, and Aliyura did this to him, so she's coming back to get him. Back on the streets, Leo gets knocked off the scooter and ends up on the truck monster where Aliyura takes him inside. She's a little loopy in the head. She used to be dating Deldro and she loved his personality, but she thought he was too ugly. So in order to fix that, she chopped him up, liquefied him into blood, and then drained a hot guy, Hummer, of all of his blood, replacing it with Brody as the blood. She finds them. As you can imagine, if your girlfriend chops you up and liquefies you, you wouldn't really want to get back together. So they transform and punch the truck monster, stopping it in its tracks, but also sending them flying across the city. Meanwhile, Aliyura is pestering Leo inside the truck for a love story, but he really hasn't had any romantic experiences here to tell. The closest thing would be the time he spends with White, but he doesn't see that going anywhere. Aliyura keeps trying to pressure Leo into going the crazed yandere route like she did, making him really worried for his life. Outside, the team has come up with a plan to stop her and get Leo to redirect the truck so they can lead it into the park where Brody and Hummer can destroy it with the United States of Smash. Everything goes back to normal, and Leo ends up in the hospital again because he was still in the truck when it got smashed. But before he leaves, he decides to take some of Aliyura's advice and sneaks way out to go see a movie with her. Some time passes and Leo is at a burger joint getting some lunch for himself when, as he leaves, this mushroom man runs up to him from across the street and gets hit by a truck. The mushroom man seems to be okay because he doesn't have bones to be broken, so he gets on with what he wanted to say to Leo. Please give me burgers. He really wants burgers, but Leo doesn't give him any because he finds this whole situation weird. The drivers of the truck get out and try to buy off Mushroom Man with burgers so he doesn't sue them, and he accepts it. Later, Leo is going to have lunch again when he sees the Mushroom Man from before waiting for something. Then those two drivers come out with 4 burgers and charge Mushroom Man 4 times as much for them. Leo tries to tell Mushroom Man that he is being scammed, but he already knew that. Since he can't go to buy the burgers himself because of the racism towards non-humans in this part of the city, they are the only people willing to get those burgers for him. Leo can't stand to let him keep getting scammed, so he agrees to buy the burgers for him and introduces himself as Leo. The Mushroom Man also introduces himself with a long-ass name, but just call him Nage. Leo and Nage spend more and more time together and get to know each other pretty well, but one night, those two drivers get into an accident and run Nage over again. They were already having a really bad night, so they start beating him up for no reason because they are agitated and Nage's defense mechanism activates, knocking everyone in the area out. The next day, the event made headlines as all those people suddenly went unconscious, but none of them knew what happened because they all got amnesia from it. Leo realizes that the incident happened around where he usually meets Nage, so he goes to check up on him and finds him sitting on a bench, though he doesn't remember what happened either. Shortly thereafter, Leo gets knocked out by the drivers and dragged into the back of their truck where they take Nage and plan to weaponize his defense mechanism to rob people blind. They start beating him up again to get it to happen, but Leo uses his eyes of God to make them hallucinate and tries to knock them out by overloading their brains, but in the process, the fat dude lands on him, deactivating his eyes. The other one then takes the bat and begins to beat Leo up, but seeing Leo get hurt activates Nage's defense mechanism and a large chunk of the city gets covered in the gas. Leo wakes up in the hospital, having forgotten all about Nage and what happened to him, but after he is released, he bumps into Nage, who has also forgotten about him, and the two meet for the first time a second time. Later, Leo goes to visit White again, but finds her talking to someone who turns out to be her brother, Black. Leo goes to grab some food with Black and finds out from him that White is in the hospital because of a bad heart condition. Soon after, Vivian walks by and accidentally spills some coffee on Leo, but before it can hit him, Black uses telekinesis to stop it, saying it's something that runs in the family, but he is terrible at it and still drops the coffee on Leo. Later in the day, Lieber gets a call from Zap saying he has been kidnapped, so Klaus and Leo rush over to save him, but find themselves in an underground fighting ring where Klaus is forced to fight for Zap's freedom. Klaus doesn't like the idea, but since he believes is to save Zap, he is going to do it. Meanwhile, Zap is in on the whole thing and is tricking Klaus into fighting for him so he can clear his debt with the owner. The first guy Klaus has to fight is a monster that is at least twice his size and taunts him to begin fighting. Zap is worried and tells the organizer to get a doctor ready, but not for Klaus. After demolishing the competition at every turn, the crowd is going wild for Klaus and he is really starting to get into it. So much so that the owner gets out of his seat and personally challenges him to a match. Klaus initially declines, but the announcer tells him he should really accept it because if the owner challenges someone, then the ownership of the Fight Club is at stake. Klaus takes a moment to think, but before he can give an answer, the owner attacks him and the fight begins. The owner is a lot better than all the other competitors that Klaus has faced up to this point, but in the end, he is still able to land a punch and blows the owner's head off. However, he isn't dead and turns out to be a vampire blood breed that took over a corpse to run this place. However, he wasn't the one that killed the body's original owner, so he has done nothing wrong. Later that night, Leo runs into Black and gives him a ride home. But Black then goes to meet the King of Depravity and turns out to have an alternate personality as the King of Despair, preparing for some grand finale. Now for a look into Zap's life. He wakes up, grabs some food, then goes out for some gambling. Occasionally almost gets mugged, but then beats them up and mugs the muggers. Followed by some additional gambling, and it all repeats the next day. However, this time the cashier is hot, and because of that, Zap keeps going back to the place to get some food and ask her for her number. And due to his new fast food addiction, well, you can see the results for yourself. Suddenly, news comes in of a blood breed that is engaged in combat and making its way to the city as they speak, so they all have to head out and stop it before it can cause any serious harm to the city. They find the two fighting, but they can't tell which one is meant to be the blood breed, so they don't know who to attack. They use a mirror to find out and begin their attack, but they are unable to fully destroy it and it begins regenerating itself mid-air. Luckily, the other guy is a skilled master of the blood arts and is able to use his power to deal enough damage to the blood breed and force it into its egg form. The group recognizes the guy as the master of the Big Dipper blood arts, and also the one who trains Zap and is currently using him to translate, so the master is greatly disappointed to see that his student has turned into a doughboy. He intends to take Zap back with him for some hellish training, but Klaus begs him to reconsider his decision, so as a compromise, he says if Zap can disarm the egg, then he'll get to stay. But it's not going to be so easy to do since the egg has a defense system that prevents external interference. Zap is getting cold feet because he doesn't think he can handle it, so Chang tries to motivate him by convincing him that Hot Cashier is interested in him and is down to Disney Plus and Thrust. By the power of boners, he manages to disarm the egg, but is sorely devastated to find out that Chang made the whole thing up. Meanwhile, White and Black are still in her room and Black has something to talk about. He is starting to realize that he may not always be himself, and it is as though there are two versions of him in his mind, leaving him scared and confused, but White calms him down and says he is going to be fine since they can get through anything if they stay together. But later we see Black confronting his alternate self, the King of Despair, and appears he was put in the same kind of situation as Leo where he had to take on a curse for the sake of White, and he is once again taken over by the King of Despair. A plane is quickly approaching the city, and as the military check it out, they find that the plane has a blood breed on the front. On the ground, a large crowd is gathered to see what will happen here since planes that try to land in the city are usually destroyed by some huge tentacles. And in that crowd, the King of Despair, Ali Yura, and the King of Depravity are all sitting and waiting for something to happen. As the plane approaches the towers, it indeed gets destroyed by a tentacle, and the blood breed is flung into a nearby building. Leo's job here is to use the eyes of God to find out the blood breed's true name so that Klaus can seal it. So he gets dragged up to it so he can get a good look at it. After a bit of fighting, Leo has finally written down his full name, so Bloody Hammer takes him and jumps out of the building to get him to safety. As Leo is falling down the building, he notices a light emanating from it, and a few moments later, a bright flash comes from the tower, which is related to the collapse of the city. Up top, Zap meets up with the guy that was fighting the blood breed before it got here, and he is also be a disciple of the master. So the two work together to incapacitate the blood breed before it can regain its full form and give Klaus the opportunity to seal it. We see a little more about White and Black's history, as they were present during the great collapse that formed this city and confronted by a creature. In exchange for guaranteeing that it would not harm White, Black willingly gave up his body to the creature, and thus the King of Despair was born. And right now, the King of Despair is ordering White to gauge out Leo's eyes in exchange for her brother getting full control of his body back. After the last night's whole ordeal, Zap, Leo, and Zed finally get the chance to eat some food, but before they begin, the ceiling caves in as a large metal object crashes through. Luckily, both Zed and Zap manage to save everyone from certain death. The crash was caused by some creature that Klaus was fighting, so he asked them to assist him. Earlier that day, as lunchtime rolled around, Leo wanted to go get some food with Zap and Zed, but Zap intended to mess with Zed a little, so he brought him to a fish restaurant. Zed is a fishman, so Zap had thought he would be weirded out by eating fish, but fish still eat other fish in the ocean, so there is no real reason for him to care about it. He calls Zap out for trying to mess with him, but Zap doesn't give it up and keeps taking them to places with the grossest food imaginable, much to Leo's dismay. I mean, look at that, that's an old man in a bowl of soup. While they still haven't had lunch yet, Klaus and Steven are being informed of the Thousand Brothers group, who are literally 1,000 brothers. And coincidentally, 1,000 power suits were bought from China recently, so it is reasonable to assume that the Thousand Brothers are plotting something, therefore the inspector asks for their help. They go to meet with the people they will be helping, in this case, the League of High Order Spirituals. Abrams greets them, and one of them, Angelica, teleports behind him, saying he is being too formal. Everyone in the League is one of the casters that halted the Great Collapse, and they all possess some special powers. Their leader is this man, Elder, and they are still trying to track down the Thousand Brothers, but elsewhere, Leo has gotten fed up with gross food and takes them to a restaurant with food he can actually eat. But before they can start, a woman busts in through the window and starts yelling at the owner because he had told her that he would leave his wife for her, the same wife standing next to him. So a long telenovela argument lasting 20 minutes begins, and honestly, this one is on them for not eating the food while it was still non-bloody. They end up just going to Vivian's place, but that leads us to the destruction we saw. After everything was taken care of, Abrams is talking with Elder and is informed that the barrier that was placed to stop the Great Collapse has been weakened recently. Back then, there was one entity that they were unable to locate within the barrier, and as the two casters who were in charge at the time are dead, they have no way of knowing what happened to it. Though there were two survivors at the time, Black and White is currently talking to Leo at a church, showing hesitation when the King of Despair comes in and tells her to cut to the chase, so she asks Leo to give her his eyes. White's real name is Mary Macbeth, and she was born to Benjamin and Emma Macbeth. They are a family of casters, but William is the only child in the family who inherited the psychic powers of his parents. Mary had always thought of herself as a failure for not having powers of her own and envied Will for his, but at some point he simply stopped using his powers altogether. Despite being bullied in school, he never once used his powers to fight back against them and would never stand up for himself in general. But when Mary got her camera stolen by the bullies one day, he was willing to jump off a bridge to retrieve it, but didn't think about what he was going to do after he had caught the camera. He later wakes up in the hospital with Mary by his side, having almost died back there, and he is surprisingly calm about the whole thing and doesn't have any special thoughts about it. Mary yells at him for risking his life back there for her sake and still not caring enough to use his powers to save himself. He apologizes, and she makes him promise to protect himself too. After that, the two's relationship had greatly improved and they became closer than ever before. But that all came to an end on the day of the Great Collapse, where their parents sacrificed themselves to protect the city, and confronted with that entity, Will sacrificed his body to protect Mary. So now she has to make a deal to get Will back, and to do that, she needs to steal Leo's eyes. So she puts a device on his face that knocks him out, and he gets dragged off by the King of Despair, who plans to use his power to break the barrier that held back the Great Collapse. Upon doing so, Mary's heart begins to fail because the barrier was placed in her by their parents to keep her alive. As the final phase of the King of Despair's plan comes to fruition, he shoots Mary in the heart, completely destroying the barrier. Now that the barrier has been destroyed, the second Great Collapse has begun and the city streets are filled with fog. The casters have been called in to fix the damaged barrier, so they have requested that Libra help them search for the final piece required to repair it. While in the car, they wonder if Leo is really going to be alright, since they know that he has been captured by the enemy, but once he is of no use anymore, it will likely dispose of him. However, it is for that reason that Abrams knows that Leo is going to be alright, at least for a while longer, since they have not managed to fully destroy the barrier yet. And the reason the barrier hasn't been completely destroyed yet is because there is one piece remaining. Mary, whose life force has been interwoven into the barrier, making her in a sense a living barrier and also confirming that she is alive. The King of Despair wakes up in the church and finds that there's far less chaos going on than he anticipated, realizing that Mary must still be alive somehow. He has to find her, and to do that, he needs Leo's eyes of God once more. Meanwhile, Leo is still stuck in the room that the King of Despair left him in when the King of Depravity comes in and offers to play a game with him. Heads or tails, if he wins, then the King of Depravity will answer any question he has for him, but if not, then he'll be stuck here till he dies. However, he chooses not to play a game and begins the long journey out of the place alone. The King of Depravity goes to meet the King of Despair, who is oddly tired right now. His motivation for doing all this was because he wished to see the Great Collapse again because it was so magnificent the first time he saw it. The entity that took over William's body had been around for millennia and had always simply been an observer, but when he saw such a brilliant display, he decided to interfere with the world of the mortals to make it happen again by any means necessary, so the King of Depravity tells him to just have fun with it. He goes out and doesn't really care what happens anymore, so he starts using William's powers to literally shuffle the city around. With all the psychic exertion that he's putting William through, his body is bound to give out eventually. Leo finally makes it back to the surface, but finds the entire city in chaos. He breaks down after seeing all the trouble his eyes have caused, but Monkey soon finds him and shows him a video that Mary recorded apologizing for what she did and asking Sonic to save Leo for her. Seeing this, Leo knows what he's got to do, and it may land him in the hospital again if there's still one to be taken to after all this. He has to go to the source of all this chaos. He runs through the city streets and meets up with the rest of Libra, who help him get there quicker by tossing him into the sky and protecting him through the streets. Meanwhile, Klaus has gone to meet the King of Despair with intentions of getting William back, but that also means he must protect him from himself in this case. Leo is still making his way over when one of his eyes overheats and breaks, and to make things worse, he gets attacked by several zombies roaming the streets. Luckily, Zap arrives just in time to save him and gets him a ride to keep going toward the King of Despair. Meanwhile, Klaus is at the end of his rope in his fight with him, and is about to be killed off, but the King of Despair tells him not to worry since there will definitely be another hero to take his place after he is dead, just like there always is, but Leo stands behind the King of Despair and refutes his statement. The King of Despair asks Leo if he plans to kill him with his eyes, but he says he's not sure about that. It might be the most logical thing to do, but that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. He looks at him with his eyes and sees that William is still in there and doesn't want to die, so Leo yells out for Mary, telling her not to give up yet, and with his eyes, he is able to see her soul. She tries to apologize to him for what she did, but he already knows her circumstances, so he has forgiven her for it. But her job here isn't done yet, since as long as a human keeps trying to move towards the light, they can never be defeated. So Mary can start here by reaching William and getting him to regain control. Back in the real world, Leo runs up to the King of Despair and headbutts him across the forehead while also using his good eye to take control of his visions and show him the image of Mary's soul, and it pulls William into a space where they can meet each other. He tries to convince Mary that they don't need to fix the barrier and that the world is better off collapsing, but he's only saying that because he doesn't want Mary to sacrifice herself to repair it. However, she already decided she needs to do this and asks William to live a happy life for her sake, and that she will always be with him. William understands how she feels and says his final goodbye to Mary before using the last of his power and her soul to repair the barrier and save the world.